Kremlin is expanding its military presence in Armenia as tensions with Azerbaijan grow, another consequence of the Moscow-Baku confrontation. The Kremlin has accelerated the manning of its military base in order to increase military and political pressure on the countries of the South Caucasus. This is the Gyumri base. It is quite well known and was used by the Russian Federation, including to support the Armenian military during the military campaign in Nagorno-Karabakh. Meanwhile, the Russians are recruiting among the military personnel serving in Rostov and Volgograd regions, as well as in the temporarily occupied Crimea, according to Ukraine's military intelligence. Russia is looking for volunteers among representatives of the enslaved peoples of the Caucasus. We're talking about North Ossetia and Adygea. Russia's troop deployment in Armenia is part of the Kremlin's broader strategy to destabilize global security. Moscow is building up its military presence in the Caucasus. The deterioration of relations between Azerbaijan and the Russian Federation was probably prepared in advance. Alexa, do you think there will be any serious consequences of this conflict between Russia and Azerbaijan? By the way, I listened to one of the experts, and he said that all this is being done to simply take away the business of Azerbaijanis. I think it's more difficult than taking away, because the business could have been taken away without such a big deal. This is an increase in the degree of tension in the Caucasus in the confrontation with Azerbaijan. You can clearly see that Azerbaijan is a country that is supported by Turkey, and Turkey is a major player in the Middle East, and Turkey has now shown its independence in decision-making in the Middle East and has stopped looking back at the Russian Federation. I am sure that this is a challenge to the Kremlin or a way of raising the temperature in the Middle East. And perhaps right now, there is a desire to return to the Middle East through the Caucasus. This may be an attempt to compensate for the loss of influence in Iran or to demonstrate that the Russian Federation does not abandon its own. That is why they are probably planning to intensify their presence in Armenia. In fact, in my opinion, this conflict, if it continues to escalate, may well escalate into another military confrontation. After all, according to our intelligence officers, the Russian Federation is already forced to redeploy some of its troops. Probably it is not a significant force, only a small contingent. Nevertheless, Russia is still forced to move its military to the base in Gyumri, Armenia, to create tension on the border with Azerbaijan. But this is also indicative. For us, this is symptomatic because we see that Russia is no longer able to man the base with its existing military forces alone. They are forced to turn to volunteers and actively seek those willing to join the manning of the base. This, in turn, gives us reason to believe that the Russian Federation has fully concentrated its resources around Ukraine. Everything the Kremlin currently has at its disposal is actually concentrated here. Therefore, we can assume that Russia's borders remain essentially exposed, and all the threats it addresses to the Baltic states and Europe are currently blocked by the war in Ukraine. So we come to the conclusion that, at least for now, the war in Ukraine is to some extent beneficial to Europe. It feels more secure while Russia is focused here. I'm sorry, but this is my opinion. Regarding the situation in general, it is worth noting that the main intelligence directorate has reported that they are tracking all movements of Russian troops, both within and outside the Russian Federation.